Hi everyone, I'm Trina, or you can call me Beans around here. I am writing a blog called How to Escape a Cult That's Taken Over the World. I'm part of like a scattered community here in Ireland that are awakening to not quite get cryptocurrency. People are all from different factions. People are like, it's like I said, it's a scattered community, so it's not like we're all on the same page about everything, but like they're this close, do you know what I mean? To waking up to the idea. And a lot of people have. There's a sector of that community that's into cryptocurrencies, but they're still learning about this side of it, and I'm kind of bringing that to them. So if I were to get elected, I would probably take this funding and try to reproduce the same idea to the communities we have here, use it as an incentive to get people to try these types of election processes, kind of like the way Dan describes in his book, the law of the jungle. What's happening here with things like protests and gatherings and things is the loudest people are taking leadership roles, and you know, it's very ego driven. And recently, as things haven't gone the way people were expecting them to, there's been like a massive divide, and we're left with like kind of a right-left situation again, because people are frustrated with the way, you know, people who took the initiative are doing things. So I kind of want to use that to encourage people to try this process, to actually elect people to do things rather than just let people, because there's also the party politics involved as well. Like there's people who are literally creating parties to put their banner on these events and things and make it their own. And it's like, well, we really just want to represent ourselves as the Irish people, you know. So yeah, that's what I would do if I was elected. But I'm really interested and excited to be here to hear everybody's ideas. So what the hell was that about? That was the first Eden community. I have joined the first Eden community. It's called Eden on EOS. And I'd like to start the first Eden community here in Ireland. So I just put myself forward to become a delegate of some funding. I didn't get the funding. However, the person that we did choose to go through has offered to help us with what I said we wanted to do here. So the process that I was on was all kind of automated through an online system that they built. But if it needs to work online, it's not really going to work, right? And they want to know this as well. So they really want to support us in doing this on the ground. They want to know that it works on the ground, and that if everything was shut down, it would, that this process would still work. So they want us to be able to demonstrate that it works in person, that we can host events where we join at a table, brainstorm, discuss, pick somebody out of the group who's going to take the solutions discussed at the group and go forward to the next round to create a, I don't want to make it look like, you know, the Freemason symbol everyone's terrified of, but we become this kind of network, a bottom-up network rather than top-down, where people at the top are always answering to the people below them, and it kind of comes all the way down, similar to how the IRB, who freed us from the British, actually worked. We had our 7 leaders at the top, and when they were all executed, they each had people below them who took over from their position, and they made sure that they had a setup that where that would happen if they were taken out. So it was like below them, they each had a number of people who were also leaders delegated by people below them. And that's how we freed Ireland from the British. So this is the type of network that I think we really need to set up again. This is an election process that will do that. I will post that full video so that you can see what happened. It was a very interesting interaction. What we actually elected these people to do is to govern the use of funds of a blockchain. And we get that funding from block producers who are trusting us to bring people into this community. And we want to do that because we want to have our own currency. We want a currency that's decentralized, and we want a governing system that's decentralized. And that's what this election process does. It creates a decentralized governing system. So if you do not agree with who's taking the lead on something, this is the kind of process to say, well, how about we elect somebody to solve this problem? Or how about we elect somebody to lead a protest? Or how about we elect someone to just chair a meeting? Because I've been to a lot of meetings, right? And they're frustrating when You expect the meetings to be like full of ideas and solutions, but you end up with so many people with so many ideas that it's just people shouting across at each other and there's no coordination. If you want to coordinate all that, you've got to split people up into groups. So that's what this process does. And it does it randomly, right? The random aspect is key to stopping parties from getting their people into each group, right? So we don't want to exclude Yellow Vest. We don't want to exclude any organization that has been part of bringing us forward. They are on our side. They have done a lot for us. Whether they should be leading us or not should be up to the community, right? Not based on the funding that they have, or not based on the number of people they have in their organization. So we need an election process that is shill-proof and party-proof. How about we elect a board? Because the beauty of this process is you don't end up with one person at the top. You end up with lots and lots of groups that a delegate is answering to. And then that delegate becomes part of another group who vote in a chief delegate. And that chief delegate is answering to them. And then there's a group of chief delegates at the top. So we ended up with 6 chief delegates. And below them, there are 35 delegates. And so all of them have a certain amount of bandwidth, a certain amount of time they can give to the solutions they've just come up with. So the chief delegates are discussing among themselves how we can move forward now that we know who's who, we know who the important people are, we know who we should be speaking to, so that we can really coordinate and get done what we all, as a shared goal, want to get done. Doesn't that sound like what we want to do? And I wasn't really sure how this was going to go beforehand. Like, what are we actually going to sit and talk about, right? I mean, everyone has their own ideas, what we should be doing. And so what was really interesting about the meeting that I had, the guy who we put forward really cleverly said, look, all of these solutions are good. If you all trust me, I want to support all your ideas. I'm going to take them forward with me to the next round. And I'm going to make sure that the next delegates who I'll be speaking to in the next round know about all your ideas, so that whoever it is that I vote for, they will know your ideas and they should bring those ideas forward to the next round so that they can be funded or supported or whatever it is that we need to get those solutions out there. I know Lovejoy for many, many years, so I gave him my vote. Because I've known this guy so many years, I trust him a lot, and I know that the other people would as well, because he's very well known in the community. He definitely knows the right people to vote for in the next round. That's another important thing to consider whenever you're voting for somebody. Whoever is going to go through to the next round in that election process needs to be voted by a supermajority, which means 4 out of 5 minimum. You're actually discussing how you're going to vote in these meetings. So you can come to a decision, well, actually, I'm not going to give my vote to myself, or I'm not going to give my vote to this person if all of you are giving your vote to that person, because it's better for us to actually have someone put forward and bring our ideas forward, so that whoever's the chief delegate knows all of our concerns and gets all of our ideas, so that if that's something they want to put funding into, they can. Although I know the guy, I know Lovejoy many years, and that's why I gave him my vote. I know that the community trusts him, and I knew that he was going to go far if we put him through. It was only by chance that I ended up in a group with Lovejoy. You're put together into this group randomly, right? But it's a small community, right? There's about 250 people. You wouldn't necessarily know everyone out of 250 people, but you generally know, especially because you all are together within this shared goal, you tend to get to know people and who people trust. That's the same as what we have, right? We've built a community like that. We have certain people that we trust with certain responsibilities. And then we have people who have just taken authority over certain things, but actually they've lost the trust of the community, and yet they're still in that position because we live by this law of the jungle instead of establishing a system where we choose who should be responsible for that, right? Problem with, a group or affiliation taking charge of things like our protests is that there is nobody to take over where we can all agree that that's who the community actually wants to take over it. What we have is a situation where people of the very opposite mind, people who are frustrated with what that group is doing, who are the most frustrated and have the largest voices, they're going to be the ones, but they're not necessarily the ones who have this solution. They're just going to be the ones to say, okay, we're going that way. You can either go with them or you can come with us. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just that the community has no power in that situation. We're just left with a left-right situation, which is what happens naturally whenever it comes to power dynamics. So we've got to be able to counteract that. We've got to be able to design a system where it's not necessarily going to be the people with the biggest egos or the people who shout the loudest or have the best funding for campaigning who gets elected. We need to have a process that is shill proof, right? Because everyone in our government is a shill, right? We know that. Everyone who's, not everyone, right? But definitely everyone in a political party is a shill, right? They are there pretending that they have certain interests to improve the economy, the country, whatever, and really they're out for themselves. And we know that because they are part of a political party, and they wouldn't have that position if they weren't part of that political party. Being part of a political party gives them the advantage. It's like, as an independent, you can only be in one place at one time. But if you have a party, you spread your people out into different parts so that in each constituency, you're going to have one person. And so when it comes to counting the seats, you've got this many people who have the same mindset as you according to your party rules, right? Because if there's anybody who votes against your party, you fucking sack them and they've lost their job. So they're not going to do that, right? The one person who did do that from Fianna Fáil recently, they had to quit before they could do that. So we need a system that is party proof, right? It does not allow for political parties to split themselves into different groups, right? So although me and Lovejoy were friends, we ended up in the same group. So both of us couldn't go forward. Either he had to vote for me or I had to vote for him. Or if we both vote for each other and everybody else votes for different people, then there's no supermajority and we end up with no delegate who goes forward.
If you all would see fit to advance me to the next round, I would be head over heels to help out with creating materials that can help you on the ground, or direct any resources from whatever I end up receiving to support people on the ground trying to organize fractal democracy, like in the actual municipalities where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And Beans, I've been paying attention to what you're up to in Ireland, and I'm super excited about it. And one of the things I'm most passionate about in this community is really doing like grassroots on the ground EdenOS, like fractal democracy on the ground. I'm even more excited about that than blockchain implementation, but I understand we're starting here and this is important. This is historic and amazing.
Mm-hmm. And then we also formed a group. So we opened a Telegram channel between the 5 of us. So the 4 of us who voted for Lovejoy, we now have a direct line of contact with them where we can discuss what we were talking about in that meeting. Now all of these solutions that we've come up with, we're kind of working together on them as a small group, which is much easier to coordinate. And because our guy went so far in this process, he went all the way to the end, to the final 6, we have a lot of funding behind us. So I don't want to talk too much about funding because that's not necessarily how it's going to work for us. Unless, of course, in the long run, I mean, as you heard in my previous videos, that should be the goal, to get our own currency. And if we were to do this off blockchain, it's a possibility that we could do that, especially if we became an Eden community. That is what Eden communities are. Like this one is Eden on EOS. You could have an Eden on Monero, right? If you know anything about cryptocurrency, you know that Monero is private. And I know that our community are very passionate about keeping our transactions private, right? We don't want to lose cash. Now, usually when we say cash, what we're talking about is actually a physical thing that's not in a bank, something you can hold. This doesn't necessarily solve that problem. That's another problem to solve down the road. Like I said in my previous video, we need to solve the currency problem before we can solve the cashless problem, because the currency has to be replaced either way.